Hi, I'm Kent Vaughn with Blaze Performance Solutions, and today I want to talk about looking for potential everywhere and in everyone. Specifically, this is really about leading other people. Whether you're the leader or not, you have a responsibility to lead your own life, but also to lead other people by what you're doing and how you're doing it. Let me give you a couple of examples. One of them comes from Henry Ford. Now, Henry Ford's a pretty well-known guy. He certainly was a very successful auto executive. And he came up with the idea, frankly, of the assembly line for the automobile, which he's well known for. He's also the guy that said, I want to make the car so affordable that everyone can own one, that there'll be one in every home. That was very vastly different than the Hewlett-Packards and many of the other Bugattis and expensive Pierce Arrows and expensive cars of the time. His goal was to make the car affordable for everyone. Well, where did he come up with that? How did he figure out that an assembly line was the answer? In a very unusual place. One day he was visiting a friend of his who had just opened a new meat packing operation. His friend had invited Henry to come and see what he was doing, and he saw that the beef came in and they were hung on these chains, and the chains moved through on a conveyor, and each butcher removed a part of the beef, the steaks, the ribs, the whatever, all the different parts. And he started thinking, wait a minute, what if you built cars that way? Up until then, cars were very much batch made. You'd build it all on a bench. You know, you'd bring all the parts to create the carriage, the undercarriage, and assemble the driving mechanism and the engine and the transmission, everything right there on a bench, and all the parts would come to the car, and they'd build a car that way, and people would be running all over the place. He said, what if you had those pieces on a conveyor? You know, you had the bottom of the chassis on a conveyor, and as it went down the conveyor, people added things, and that was their expertise, to put on the transmission, to put part of the engine on, to put on the steering wheel, to put on in the seats or whatever. Well, now it's just a given that that's the way you do it, but it certainly wasn't well over 100 years ago when Henry Ford started. He was looking for potential everywhere. He was really looking for potential. Now, let me give you a personal example. Thankfully, years ago, I graduated from college and graduate school with highest honors and scholarships and all kinds of things. But you wouldn't have known that if you'd known me when I was a senior in high school. When I was a senior in high school, I was really more interested in fumes, gas fumes and perfume. I worked, I owned motorcycles, I owned cars, I had lots of fun, and in school I was pretty much an A-C student. If you could get an A by attending class and listening very carefully and taking good notes, which I did, then I got an A. If that class required you to do a lot of reading outside of class or a lot of homework, I was going to get a C. I probably wasn't going to do much better than that. Why? Because I was just too busy doing other things. Things I thought were more important that really weren't. So let me tell you about a teacher of mine, Miss Smith. Miss Smith was my Algebra 3 teacher my last semester of high school. And one day I walked in the lunchroom and saw Miss Smith, my algebra teacher, meeting with my government economics teacher. Now, government and economics is something I've always loved. I've always loved anything about economics and business. And that afternoon, my last class of the day was government economics. And I, after class, was called up to the teacher's desk, and she said, "Hey, can I talk to you for just a minute?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." Went up and talked to her, and she said, "Hey, you know, at lunch, I was having lunch with Miss Smith. She and I were college roommates." I said, "Oh, I didn't know that." She said, as you walked in, I said to her, "There's Kent Vaughn. He's one of the best government economics students I have. He's excellent." And Miss Smith looked at her and said, "Is that the same Kent Vaughn I have? Because he's not particularly good at algebra. Like, I don't think he really even cares." And my government economics teacher said, "That can't be the same guy." And so she asked me, "Is that true?" And I said, "Well, I guess it is." She said, "Well, you're stellar at government economics." I said, "That's the way my mind works. I love it. I really like this. Algebra 3, I just don't get the homework. I go home, I listen in class, but I go home and try it. It just doesn't work for me." Math, I think, just skips generations in my family. Well, I walked out of the class and didn't think anything else about it until the first period of the next day, which I had with Miss Smith in my Algebra 3 class. And Miss Smith, at the end of the class, said, "Hey, Kent, can I talk to you for just a minute?" I thought, oh, this seems a bit like deja vu. And she told me the same story. And they said, "How is that?" And I said, "Miss Smith, apparently math skips generations. My dad's an engineer, my mother's a school teacher, but I just don't get it. I just don't do well at it. I try, but it just doesn't work. I guess we'll say I've given up. And Miss Smith said, "Well, I haven't given up." You've got potential, Kent. You can do this. Tomorrow morning, meet me at 7:30 a.m. right here in the classroom and show me your homework. I said, Ms. Smith, you got to be kidding. School doesn't start till 8:30. She said, no, meet me. Okay, yes, ma'am. So the next morning at 7:30, I met Miss Smith in my Algebra 3 class and had given a little effort on my homework, and she helped me quite a bit, and I understood it a little better. And I thought, boy, I'm glad that's over. At the end of our time together, about 45 minutes, just 15 minutes before that class was supposed to start, she said, okay, Kent, I'll see you tomorrow at 7:30 again. I said, what? Really? This is going to be a pattern? She said, yeah, it is. It's going to be a pattern for the rest of the year. Every morning for the rest of the year, I met Miss Smith at 7:30 a.m. And by the end of the semester, I got an A in that final 9-week grading period. Oh, I still, I think, got a B minus, maybe even a C plus. But something had changed dramatically. I thought maybe math doesn't skip generations. And maybe I really can do well at all of my classes with some help. Miss Smith saw some potential in me. My children, who are now either out of college or still in college, have often said, Dad, we can't ever believe that was you. You were such a stellar student in college, and at really everything you've done, you've tried your best. What happened there? He said, I don't know. I guess I just gave up. Now that has happened to all of us at one time or another, where we've almost given up or have given up. And so I would ask you to be the person who looks for the potential in other people, who sees the potential in other people and says, what can I do to lift them, to bring them up, to help them be better? I'm not saying everybody wants to be an A student in math, but I bet they don't want to flunk either. Just some ideas to think about as you work today with your coworkers and your clients and everyone else around you. Have a great day. This is Kent Vaughn with Blaze Performance Solutions.